I'm Julie Bogart. I started a company called BraveWriter back in January of 2000. I worked as a professional writer, copy editor, ghostwriter, and magazine editor and contributor before I started BraveWriter. I had the good fortune of being in the homeschooling community and having friends who knew about my writing life, my professional writing life. I wasn't actually using any curricula with my kids to teach writing. I didn't feel the need for it. I was using books that I had already understood and known from my own writing life. Well, I had some of my friends ask me if I would teach their kids and them how to teach writing. They said they were having struggles using the writing manuals that they had purchased at homeschool conventions or that friends had suggested. So I said sure, and for 7 weeks, we met during a Sunday school class period at our local church, and I taught parents and teachers how to teach writing. Now, full confession, I assumed they'd be bored after 2 sessions. I actually thought that everything I was going to say were the things they already expected to hear about writing. They just needed a little extra encouragement. What came back to me in that very first session startled me. These parents acted like I was sharing information they had never heard before, and I didn't expect that. So after the first session, I asked one of my friends, the one who asked me to start this little workshop, "What are you using to teach writing?" She handed me a book. I'm not going to out the name of the curriculum, but this is a long time ago. So we're talking, now 20 years ago. And she handed me the book, and I opened it up. And on the first page, it was teaching how to teach the paragraph. And at the top of the page was a paragraph. And so I read their sample. And then I handed the book to my friend and I said, "Have you read this paragraph?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you like reading it?" And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Do you like this paragraph? Do you wish you knew what came after this paragraph?" And she said, "Well, no." I said, "Then this isn't a good writing program. Let's just put it away right now. If the sample paragraph in the book teaching writing isn't compelling enough to make you want to read a second paragraph, why would we want our kids to produce paragraphs like this one?" And she paused and she said, "I never thought about it. I thought this was correct writing." I said, "If correct writing isn't interesting to read, it's not correct writing. There is a lot of writing in school that gets an A, but that isn't good writing, that no one would pay to read, no one would stay on the blog if they read it. So what we want to start with is liveliness in writing, reader engaging writing. And yes, that's also true for academic writing. We're not just talking about conversational writing or casual writing or internet writing. Academic writing at its best should compel the reader. That is its #1 job. So even if we're talking about the ship-shape goals of academic and research-based writing, the best writers make their readers want to keep writing. Want to keep reading. And so that's what we're looking at today. What are these myths that we keep perpetuating and keep producing inside of our manuals, and yet are not liberating writers to be effective writers? So let's get started. I made some PowerPoints. So let's look at our little our little title again. If you're just joining me, we are talking about the 6 writing myths that are the most popular. And pow, we're going to knock a punch in them and bust some myths. If I had, good music, Ghostbusters would be playing right now. Someone's asking if there is a funny moving background on the screen. Is everyone able to see me all right? Okay, good. Yeah, if you're having connection problems, one thing to try is hopping out of the broadcast and then coming back in. All right, so 6 Mythbusters. Ready? Number 1. The #1 myth about writing is this. This is the most common, most popular. Ready? Mechanics first, writing second. In other words, let me hold it up again. You can screenshot these if you want to make sure you've got them. Another thing to know about these is if you have to leave early and you go to watch the replay at catchme.bravewriter, here's the replay link. You can find where you left off by scrolling till you see the PowerPoint, okay? All right, so here we go. Number 1, mechanics first, writing second. Some educators and some writing instructors talk about writing like it's a foreign language, or maybe learning how to play a musical instrument, or discovering how to be a part of a sport you've never played. They treat writing like it is foreign to children, and they have to be immersed in some kind of safe environment for learning how to express themselves in writing. So what they assume is this: if a child has good mechanics, they can spell, they can handwrite, they can punctuate, if they know the basic structure of a paragraph, then they should be able to write freely and easily. I am noticing that my background has all my stuff in it for preparation. Sorry about that. You're getting the real me today. Okay, I'm not distracted. I just had to say that. So there is a belief that the writing is dependent on accurate mechanics. So if we just teach the mechanics first, our kids will be much more capable writers, right? That's the belief at the beginning of the writing experience. But the truth is this: our kids are already fluent English speakers. They already have the writing life inside. We aren't teaching them how to self-express. They've been fluent since age 5. So what we have instead in our young writers is the writing impulse already coursing through their bodies, but they don't yet know how to transcribe it for themselves. People who say mechanics first are focused on the notion that mechanics are writing, as opposed to what's inside. That's the difference. Somebody is saying, last year we just wrote whatever our heart desired, our expression first. Yes, this is what we're talking about. What's inside the person can be written for them if they don't have the mechanics. Think about it this way. If your child, for some reason, God forbid, lost their capacity to use their hands and couldn't use their eyes, they could still be writers as long as somebody else wrote it for them. So the initial idea that mechanics are required before you can start writing is erroneous. Pleasure in writing doesn't come from accurate mechanics. Pleasure in writing doesn't come from imitation. Pleasure in writing comes from the sense that I had something unique to say and it came out of me and was known by an audience. That's where it comes from. Think of your children speaking to you while you're at the dinner table. What you have is a child who's excited to share, not someone who is nervous about getting their words out. Someone is asking, what about a 12-year-old? Well, we're going to get there. So hang in there on your questions because I want to honor this time by going through the points. And then I promise if you don't have some sense of an answer to that question by the end, I will answer it then. But pleasure comes from self-expression, not spelling, not punctuation. For your kids who are struggling with spelling and punctuation, if they feel inferior in their self-expression because those aren't accurate, it usually means that somewhere, I don't know who this is, so we are going to block this person. Oop. Okay. Sorry about that. If a child feels they need accurate spelling and punctuation in order to be a successful writer, usually that impression has come from a curriculum or unwittingly from a parent or from a co-op leader. What we want to liberate our children to discover is that the mechanics are one aspect of automaticity, being able to transcribe your own thoughts, but it is unrelated to original writing, the part of the child that is self-expression. So that is the very first principle that I want you to remember. Oh my goodness, and now we're having breakdowns in the electricity in my house. This is a very raw day for me. Thank you so much. You guys are so sweet. I need the support today. I'm feeling a little at loose ends for some unknown reason, and I don't know why. Oh my gosh, literally my lights are going on and off. Okay, we're just going to plow forward, and if they all go off, I'll just keep going. Alrighty. So the first thing you can do for a child who needs liberation is to jot down their words for them. Jot it down. What that means, okay, I'm going to turn this light off. Hold on. I'm going to just turn off. See if that helps. Okay. Because I'm making big waves. You guys, thank you. You're so nice to me. I really appreciate it. Okay. So the first thing that you can do is jot down your children's communications for them. Make sure that they know that you value the life that lives inside of them and that it deserves representation on paper. In other words, you are not going to wait for them to learn to spell or to handwrite before they get to experience the pleasure of their own words being contained on paper. We want them to have the experience that what's being written is worthy of paper. So that's the first thing you can do. Jot it down, okay? Jot it down. Voila. Okay, number 2. This myth I know you've all heard because even professionals say it, but I'm going to explain why I think it's a myth. Ready? Okay, here we go. Myth number 2, write every day. How many of you have heard that one? Write every day. I'm guessing most people here. Oh, good. Take pictures. Go ahead. Write every day. If you've heard it, give me a thumbs up or a yes in the comments. I know you have, because I was told it. So many people have told me, write every day. And of course, there are morning pages by Julia Cameron. She suggests that. And Natalie Goldberg, one of my heroes, talks about writing every day. You know what? Write every day if you want to be a professional writer. Write every day if writing is your vocation, but not if you're learning to write. And in fact, what do we mean by writing every day? I do not do original, generative, from scratch writing every day. I revise, I write emails, I do blogs, I communicate. I don't always do the kind of writing we think write every day means when we're talking about kids, and I'm a pro. I'm a person who can put thousands of words on a page in a day. What I say instead is engage writing every day. Someone says, what if a child wants to write every day? Well, you would never stop a child from doing that. Absolutely not. I mean, when I was a journaling type of kid, keeping a diary, I had to enter it every day. That felt wonderful. But the vast majority of human beings, kids and adults, benefit from what I call engaging writing every day. We're not talking about putting original thoughts down. One day might be revision. Another day might be copying. Another day might be reading writing. Another day might simply be getting out in the world of ideas so that your brain has a break and a chance to sort of digest and think about a beautiful idea, a moving experience, a new set of vocabulary words learned because you were on a field trip. What we want to do then is engage vocabulary, engage writing every day. But you don't have to start from scratch every day. I found this little quote that I kind of liked. Every student, every day, read, write, think, imagine, dream, discuss, create, share. Now, these I would not do every single one of these every day. I would do a couple of these every day. Make sure these are happening on a regular basis. Does that make sense? We're not talking about starting from scratch every morning facing the blank page. I don't even want to do that, and I'm a pro. It's hard to face a blank screen and a blank page. I see you taking pictures. I'll hold it for another moment. There you go. Good screen captures. Very good. Yeah, somebody said it's hard to believe as a public school girl that this is enough. Well, I'll tell you how I know it's enough. We've been teaching this program now for 16 years. It's enough. Deep writing experiences teach so much. It's why we only recommend one writing project a month. You need a week to at least spend time in the material, saturating in it. You need another week to free write all different aspects, maybe one day about one aspect and then another day about another aspect. And you sort of stitch together all these free writes by the end of the week. And then you need a week of revision. You can't revise in a day. You need to play with the ideas, to come to them and walk away from them, to add a few words here or there. And then finally, on the last week, when you've kind of recomposed all those pieces, now you're going to do what we call the mechanics mock-up. You're going to edit the piece, look for spelling and punctuation errors. That takes a month. That's writing every day without original writing every day. Okay? Good job. Third one. Ready? I wonder if you've heard this one. Kids prefer imagination to facts in writing. How many of you have seen those writing prompt books for kids that are all about, the alien who landed from Mars on our school campus and entered the, lunchroom? Has anyone seen those? This is a very common school way to get kids to write. It's this idea that they have such big imaginations. If we just let them use their imagination, they'll love to write. Okay, that is not what we have found to be true. Here's the truth about writing for everyone who's learning how. You start with the real. You start with what you know. Yeah, someone says that her son shuts down on imaginative prompts. I'll tell you why. It's one thing to let your imagination run or to put on dress-up clothes and play a game. It's another to commit those words to paper. That is a much more challenging experience. So what we want our kids to have confidence doing is drawing on their most direct experience and their deepest vocabulary. Their best vocabulary comes from what they know really, 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 really well. What they know really, 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 really well? Their personal experiences. Interestingly, composition classes, that Composition 101 at college, they start with the autobiographical narrative as the first essay in almost every one of those classes across the country. They don't start with an academic topic. They don't start with reviewing literature. They start with the student in the seat, and they teach them how to self-express through looking at their own lives and finding the themes that they want to write about. This is how it works. Not just at the 8-year-old level, not just at the 12-year-old level, but at the college level. Isn't that fascinating? So I want you to have permission. It's okay if your kids are writing about daily observations, the game they play, the stuff they know how to do. And in fact, boys often are asked by well-meaning mothers, how do you feel about spring? What do you feel about the game you played? When really what they want to tell you is information. These are the weapons I had to use to kill the bad guys to get to level 3. They want to give you information. And even asking for feelings from girls is not always successful. You might get feeling words, but then you get no detail. So they might say, I love spring. It's so beautiful. I love flowers. It feels so good to be outdoors. And you're like, that didn't tell me what I wanted to know about spring. So I recommend never asking feeling questions in writing. Ask specific observation questions, things that elicit detail. How does it look from above? How does it look from below? What color do we compare this to in this set of Crayolas? What color is burnt sienna? Does it match, this color we're looking at on the pine cone? That's the way you help draw them out. Get facts. When you were running on the soccer field and about to score the goal, which foot did you use to kick? Who was near you? What happened when the wind was rushing by your ears? Did you hear a sound? These are the ways we pull out the experience that's invisible to them, but is lodged inside their bodies. So here's what here's my little picture to go with this one. Tattoos are fantasy, muscles are facts. So what I want to say is this, even fiction benefits from a strong foundation in facts. And you know why? Oh, go carve pumpkins. Fabulous. And you know why? Because fantasy depends on a very strong comprehension of the natural world so that when people read your fantasy, they can relate to it. And it is believable. So fantasy and fiction are a very high level of writing. And it requires that you be very careful in your own production. And the only way to get there is to become very comfortable with the factual life you're already living. If you think about books like Harry Potter or the Narnia Chronicles, the reason we enjoy them so much isn't that they're pure fantasy. It's that within the realm of fantasy, all these touch points are so well established that we understand. So then when we do something with fantasy, it's like, oh, but I'm rooted here. I understand drinking tea and being afraid and what trees look like. Do you see? So start first with facts. All right, number 4. We're ripping through these and we're doing great. And if you haven't invited friends yet, I'm Julie Bogart, BraveWriter, online writing and language arts program for homeschoolers, and feel free to share this broadcast. Okay, here we go. We're up to number 4, and there are 6. Ready? This is the 4th myth we're going to bust. The incremental approach through formats is not a good strategy for teaching writing. The incremental approach through formats is not a good strategy for writing. Now this sounds so backwards. Literally, this is how every program teaches writing. And I want to make a case, an apologetic as it were, for why I totally disagree with that strategy. Now, here's the thing. I get a lot of parents who come to me from this approach, and they have found enormous comfort in it. And the last thing I will ever do is take away comfort from a happy parent. So if you're the person who has been using a systematic approach and it has been giving you security and comfort, well, good for you. Good for you. You found something that gave you security and comfort in the sea of uncertainty that homeschooling is. So no problem. And are formats at some point important in a student's life, in a writer's life? Absolutely. Here's the thing. I'm about writing voice first. Some people say we can teach the formats, and once kids feel secure in the format, now we can let them bring their voice in, and they'll have this lovely marriage where they have the sturdy support of the format, and now they feel permission to explore their voices. That's the thinking. And it's not irrational. You can hear that information and think this really makes sense. You know? Yes, I couldn't speak to my friends in a foreign language until I understood the basis. But here's why it isn't good thinking in the end. And here's why I know it's true, what I'm about to tell you. The writing life has to start with voice. It has to. Because once you've started down the path of formats, you have decided that the communication you want to give is external to you. It's as though you are saying, what I need is out there. It's not located in here. And kids who get in the habit early on of thinking writing is about formats find it harder to take risks in self-expression. And I've seen it. I can spot certain styles of writing at 10 paces. I read their formats and I want their voices. The college community right now around writing, their biggest complaint about most high school writing programs isn't that these kids don't know how to write formats. It's that that's all they know how to write. They don't understand how to access their interiors. So here's what happens. Our homeschooled kids who've been raised on great books, rich conversation, and in many cases, the freedom of self-expression, come in and they may not even have great formats. And the professors are like, but I loved your writing. We hear this over and over and over again. For kids who have been raised on formats and are in a homeschool context, you can easily bring in writing voice right now. I'm not saying you should feel behind. I'm saying all you want to do now is add a great, big, open, generous space for writing voice. I want you to expand the context. Instead of just doing formats, make room for play. Give them the opportunity to self-express in a variety of ways. You might suggest that they free write using a totally different voice, like they're trying to be really elegant and sophisticated. And then the next time, like someone throwing a tantrum. They can try the difference between ranting and self-restraint. Help them explode out of their habits of expression into new experiences so they start to access more parts of themselves. And just as a little 2-cent reminder, kids who are active on the internet tend to be my favorite writers. They are so used to writing for an audience that they start to understand reader impact, which is what writing's all about. Someone asked if writing a screenplay is a great way to explore voice. Well, absolutely. I mean, honestly, any form gives you that opportunity. But for kids who've been raised thinking that the format is king rather than content is king, it's going to take some work to remind them how to play, how to get outside of obeying the format rather than looking inside to see what they really have to say with the vocabulary that's the most natural to them. And of course, we do a lot of work with this in BraveWriter. We teach formats, but we save them for high school. We give a lot of space between, 6, 8, and 12 or 13 to do writing projects for sure. Write a letter, play a game, make a lap book. That's right. But we're not telling them 5-paragraph essays and topic sentence followed by 3 sentences. That's a surefire way to kill the life in writing. In fact, I always say about the topic sentence, it's overtaught and it's not necessary to teach. We want our kids to write in such a way that the content is like a riddle. It's like a surprise. If I start with a paragraph saying, I love spaghetti, the punchline is out. Why would I keep reading? But if I can use the first several sentences to entice you, on Tuesday nights, I suck on one end of the spaghetti noodle and my son sucks on the other end. And then we have a race to the middle and our lips smack and we start laughing. That's the beginning of spaghetti night at our house. Now, isn't that more compelling than on Tuesday night, we have spaghetti night. We play a game. It's called Suck on the Spaghetti Noodle. Do you see? So one of the things we're looking for here is the exploration of reader impact and playing with language and creating surprise and suspense and mystery. And that's just as true in academic writing. Surprising facts, surprising data, surprising expert opinion, a new twist on an old understood topic. That's what they're looking for at the university level. All right, number 5. Let's see where we are here. Know thy audience first. Myth number 5. I put the boom where the word first is because first is the problem. It's good to know who you're writing for, but should you know it before you pick up the pen? In most writing programs, that's what we're told. Before you pick up the pen, know who you're writing for. Now, here's the thing. If we're writing a letter to grandparents, we do want to think about the grandparents. Do they know our hip-hop artists that we're fans of? Maybe not. So if we say, I love Kanye West, thanks for the CD, they might not know who he is. It might be worth it to explain that this is who this person is and why you like him. If you're writing the same letter to a buddy, you don't need to do all that. So in that way, knowing your audience first can be beneficial. On the other hand, a lot of times it's beneficial to simply write for yourself. And I like to urge young writers to start with themselves. Because if you write for your own pleasure, you start to access all the pieces of yourself that make great writing. Your sense of humor, your insights that impress you. This is what makes great writers. This is why people who love writing write so much. They're getting a kick out of listening to themselves talk on paper. They're discovering what they think by writing. So if you start without having to think too much about audience, you get to all that information. During the revision stage, you can start thinking, well, now what shape should this writing be in? Who is it really meant for? Are there pieces that are not appropriate for the audience I'm considering? That's when we think about audience. But in that initial rush, when you're first working on a paper, so what about a high school student who has to write an essay? Should you think about the school teacher who's going to read it? You know, this lady? I mean, I don't want to think about her while I'm writing my school papers. That's just intimidating. I had a great phone call today with my son, Liam. He was, for those of you who've been following my scopes, he was my dysgraphic son who did not write from ages 9 to 11 and then finally went into handwriting therapy with a specialist for 2 years. He did not like the physical act of writing at all. But as it turns out, now that he's 20, well, he's 21 now, he's in college at St. John's College, which is a great books program which relies entirely on writing. He has also started a poetry literary magazine and weekly gathering where they write poetry and share it. This is my dysgraphic. Okay, so here's the funny phone call we had today. And I hope you can appreciate this. He wrote me last week and he said to me, Mom, I'm at St. John's and they seem to have pretty relaxed standards for their kinds of papers that we write. And I am wondering if you can give me a sense of what it takes to write a truly academic paper. And I said, sure. So I sent him to my favorite site and we talked a little bit about it. You know, he wrote them in high school, but he was not a very willing writer. So his writing life has really come to life in college. So I gave him all this information and he called me today and he had a paper due, 2 papers due last week, and he wrote one for 2 different professors. And he said, I asked all my professors, do you have specific standards that we need to hit for our writing? And they said, we're most interested in your engagement with the ideas and your natural writing voice. So Liam, the little rascal, I would never have thought to do this. He wrote 2 papers without any capital letters. He used no quote marks. His paragraphing was not important to him. He just wrote like these 2 long papers. And he used all of his natural vocabulary, and he brought in reading and things, I guess, from outside, not just from the text. And he met with one of his teachers afterwards because they have to meet with their teachers. They don't just turn in a paper and get it back. They have to actually talk about it. And the first teacher said to him, this was so inventive. It made me want to write back to you in lowercase. I felt like I had a whole new sense of you from the way that you used your punctuation in this paper. And I thought, dang him, finding a way to not even have to have capitals. What on earth? But this is the thing. Academics are impressed by risk-taking. When I was in my graduate program, we had a final due that was supposed to be these multiple essays related to these specific prompts, but we had been taught certain forms in ancient literature. And I decided to do all of my work in this final based on each form. Now, I'm not going to tell you what they are because they're theological terms, but they were each different styles of engagement. And I wrote my responses using those forms. One of them was actually like an imprecatory psalm, in fact. And my instructor wrote at the end that it was refreshing to have someone internalize the ideas and express them in vibrant new ways. I share this with you because we're so focused on cookie cutter products when the world is craving innovators. I'm not saying to not teach mechanics. Please don't hear me saying that. What I'm saying is they are a tool in service of writing voice, not the other way around. The mechanics are a tool in service of writing voice, and knowing how to marshal the mechanics and the formats are so important, but not at the expense of insight, idea generation, vocabulary, and that sense of strength that comes from really knowing I have something worth saying and I'm going to risk saying it. Good. Okay, the last one then, and to me this is the sixth myth, but the most absurd of the whole bunch, and maybe we'll go back through all 5 leading up to it first for those who are late. So the very first one was this: mechanics first, writing second. Kapow! No, you start with the writing life first. Mechanics can be taught using someone else's writing. Copy, work, and dictation. Second myth: write every day. Bam! We want instead to engage writing every day. Read it, play with it, watch television and listen to it. Okay, number 3. Kids prefer imagination to facts in writing. Nope. Kids prefer writing about what they know well, just like the pros. Start with what you know. It's a great, great principle for kids. Number 4, the incremental approach through formats. Zap it. Start with writing voice and bring in formats as they get comfortable with their own self-expression. And then number 5 was know thy audience first. Actually know. Write for yourself and then decide who the audience is. Okay, so that's 1 through 5. Number 6, ready? And I think some of you may unwittingly believe this one. If you hate writing, write more. Zoink! Don't you love my kapows? Okay, so if you hate writing, write more. How many of you have believed that? That maybe your kids would just like it better if they wrote more? Anyone have that idea? Do we need that back up here for more screen caps? I see cameras going off. Go ahead and take pictures. If you hate writing, write more. Yep, I see someone brave said, yep, yes, sigh. So you've got these poor kids who hate writing, and your solution is, hey, let's do more. Right? Oh my gosh. Now that you've heard all 6, don't you just feel like this oppressive feeling on top of you? You're like, why did I do this to my kids? Here's the thing, and we've talked about this already in so many of my scopes. Anyone who's struggling needs support. They need help. They need a partner. They need an incentive to struggle. They need a context that is safe for risk-taking and that creates a sense of community around the struggle. Does that make sense? So I want you to just think about that for a minute. As you are preparing to write with your kids and you know someone hates it, I want you to just think for a minute, well, what could I do to provide scaffolding? You can take a screenshot by tapping on the home button and the on-off button at the same time. It'll take a screenshot for you. We don't want to leave our kids hanging out here. We want to pull them up to safety where we are. And the way we do that is being partners to them. We do it through support. And of course, I've shared many times that you can certainly make brownies, rub shoulders, write at the same time. Let your child talk while you handwrite for them. Your child writes one sentence, you write the next one. Your child writes a sentence, you write the next one. Another strategy, have the child talk, you take notes, hand them the notes and say, just write, follow the notes. Each one of these 2-word things, write as much as you can remember about this 2-word key. And now go to the next one and don't worry about format. Don't worry about paragraphing. Just get the words out. This is how you create partnership with your child. This is how you move from write more to let's actually get some writing done. Let's actually make this happen. Does that make sense? So BraveWriter exists to foster writing voice, to help you become the coach and ally you want to be to your kids, and to help your kids get in touch with the feeling that they have something of worth to say and that it deserves, to be written down and shared with an interested audience. That's what we're about. And that's what I hope you're about. Your kids are brilliant. I read their writing. We've taught something like 15,000 or more families. We have sold out most of our classes this fall. In fact, Kids Write Basic, our main class, totally sold out, closed, not another one for the fall. We doubled our offerings and they're sold out. What's happening in our classes and what happens when people are hanging around the BraveWriter world is they catch a vision for what it can be to be a writer. It can be this really exciting space where you get to know what you think. You get to access all your insights, all the great thoughts you think you have that nobody knows, and put them somewhere to share with an interested audience. When Liam was 4, he used to make these little Lego men, and they each had superpowers because he was all about, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And one day I realized, oh my gosh, I can't keep track of all these. So I got a clipboard and I wrote down on the clipboard the name of each Lego man. I asked him for each superpower. We determined how many points each of these super kicks were worth when they were defeating each other. All of this was on a clipboard. He couldn't read. He couldn't write. He was 4. He carried the clipboard around for a month. He memorized or somehow associated what he was looking at with the correct names because the correct Lego men always stood on top of the correct names every time. I still have the sheet from when he was 4 that I wrote down. For Liam, that was the beginning of his writing life. He got to experience having his thought life valued so much, it made it to an official looking clipboard, and he could carry it around and share it with others. When Johanna was 12, and I was out for the evening, my husband and I were returning from a meeting, Johanna met us at the front door. Her younger sister was 5 at the time, Katrin, and she had a clipboard, and she said, Mom, Katrin wrote her first story. I said, well, she doesn't write or read yet. And she says, I know. I was putting her to bed and she started to tell me a story. So I got a clipboard and I wrote it down. Can I read it to you? So she did. Her handwriting was a mess. Capitals everywhere, misspelled words. The words were sloping down this empty page. But you know what? Johanna took a risk to record her sister's story to share it with the most interested audience she could find, Katrin's parents. And we still have that story. I still have it in my book of things that I will never, ever get rid of. And you know what? Her spelling and punctuation is adorable. I'm so glad I have a record of it at age 12, when so many of you are worried that your kids should have beautiful spelling. Johanna teaches our Arrow and Boomerang book clubs now as an adult. She was very successful in English and writing her entire academic career. But at age 12, trying to keep up with a 5-year-old telling you a great story? Why did spelling matter? It didn't. What mattered was the story. What mattered was that there was an audience willing to preserve it so we could have it forever. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about writing. I'm not just trying to get your kids ready for college, although that is definitely a BraveWriter goal, but we get them there so much more memorably and satisfyingly when our kids feel like what they have to say deserves to be on the printed page, and that they have the skills and tools to access their interiors and analyze information and bring it forth in a way that's meaningful to them. We want them to take writing risks. We want them to not feel confined to the voice of someone else who tells them what should and shouldn't be on the page. So much of school teaching has ruined generations of writers. You know how I know? Because parents write me without any confidence in their own writing skills every day. Think about how many of you look back at high school and today you still feel unconfident. You still feel like you're not really a good writer. How many of you is that? You want to share in the screen? Anyone want to risk sharing that school didn't seem to prepare them the way they wanted to be prepared? So let's not reproduce that same experience in our kids. Let's give them a better option. Let's help them get to a place where writing is not this, self-alienating experience. We want them to experience writing the way they experience speech, which is, it's available to me and I'm fluent in it. Yeah, so many people, Angela, wanted to be writers and their writing wasn't valued. Or they took a risk and they went off format to share something really precious to them and the teacher said, this isn't the right format. But see, teachers are not professional writers. Teachers are looking to hit certain markers. That's the difference. I never felt competent as a writer until I was in grad school. I got in trouble in 11th grade when the teacher was asking when we will learn to improve our writing. Oh gosh. Oh, don't get me started on the shaming techniques used in school. I have a favorite comment about that. It seems that every teacher from every year, starting in about 7th grade, says to the incoming class of English students, this is what they say: we are assigning you an essay, and you need to do XYZ for this essay. And then a student will raise their hand and say, I don't know how to write an essay. And then the teacher will say, you should have learned that last year. And then that's the end of the discussion. There's no teaching, there's no help. The student is left wondering, well, when was I learning this essay? Everyone passes the buck. It doesn't get taught. But every time you go up a notch in the writing life to a bigger challenge, you need scaffolding. You need help again. So sure, maybe a student was taught something about a 5-paragraph form or something about how to structure, but now they're in a new context with new demands. They need help all over again. This is why we teach it at the university level, even though they've had 4 years of high school, because each new level demands support for that transition. So we have come to the end of our time today. Thank you for enjoying my 6 myth-busting experiences about writing. Before we go, I want to invite you to join our Periscope emailing list so that you can get updates. If you text this number, 22828, and put in the word BraveWriter, you can enter your email address and we will add you to our Periscope emails, okay? I'm going to be scoping every day in November, and I'm going to tell you more about that on Wednesday. In the meantime, because we had such a fun day today talking about writing, I don't know if you're aware that I give away free writing lessons on the BraveWriter website. If you go to BraveWriter.com and you click right in the middle of the, oh, Lori, you didn't get a reply? All right, send me your email. That's good to know. I'm going to have to look into that. If you go to BraveWriter.com and click right in the middle, there's a sign up button. You can sign up for our regular email list there or our free daily writing tip, and then you will get a free 17-page PDF file called Free Writing Frenzy. It is a file that gives you free writing lessons, totally free, doesn't cost you a penny. And if you don't know where to begin, that's where to begin. So sign up at BraveWriter.com and download it. There's no obligation whatsoever. Somebody said, the author of Where the Red Fern Grows inspired me to focus on voice, not mechanics. Yes, in fact, that author, I think he wrote the book and then had help with his own mechanics because he wasn't actually that good of a writer. Oh, somebody loves the daily BraveWriter emails. Yeah, the writing tips, literally it's like a free curriculum. People don't realize that. Like every day, I give you something to do with your kids for free. So just sign up. They've been hugely valuable and they're wonderful for after schooling too. If you have kids in school and you want to inject some of this stuff that we're talking about, that would be great too. All right, so I think we're at the end. I offered to answer questions. So before we go, I know some of you are jumping off and that's totally fine. We've come to the end of the official broadcast, but I have some time. So if you would like to ask me some questions, I would love to answer them. Yes, the writing tips are great for adults too. I always recommend that parents take the same writing risks as their kids. So if you have a free writing session, you should sit down with your own pen and pencil and do your own writing. That way they have the experience of you writing with them. Any questions? Are we good? I'm not seeing any. Oh, here's one. The voice of structure and form is so loud. How do we shut it down? Oh, wow. One day at a time. You need support. You may even need the help of a class. Sometimes being in an online class with BraveWriter will help you have the modeling and support to let that go. Angela asks, how do I inspire an older child who does not want to write at all and it has never been forced? Well, the first question I might have for you, oh, cool, Crystal, I'll answer that about your 7-year-old in a minute. The first thing about a child who's never been forced to write, I would look to see where writing might already be happening. Are they writing on an online game community while they're playing World of Warcraft? Do they send emails or text messages? One way to engage someone who is not writing is to get out of your mindset of traditional writing. For example, maybe after your son is in bed, you fill up his whole door with Post-it notes of one half of a riddle, compliments, your favorite quotes, writing prompts. You just stick them all over the door, and then you leave at the bottom of the door a stack of Post-it notes and a pen, and just leave it and see what he does. Will he return the favor and stick them all over your door? In other words, remember our whole enchanted education discussion? When someone doesn't want to do something, often the logistics have made it oppressive. It's become a requirement. It's become, I don't know, one of those conflict creators in your relationship. So you need to reverse the curse. You have to recontextualize the experience. Maybe you need to write an apology letter that you mail in the mail to your son about writing. So he receives it in the mail and reads it instead of it being through conversation. Always conversation is helpful. Getting out of the house, discussing, well, what's going on with you in writing? How have I made it difficult for you? Now, even if you've never forced writing, it still might not be enticing. And Noah would be the first person in my family to tell you, he said this to me last week, I hate writing. And I said, oh, you are such a liar. You write all the time. And then he wrote back and he said, yeah, haha, I do, but I still hate it. So our goal isn't necessarily to get them to love it. It's to get them to feel competent in doing it, that they have access to it if they need it. And that might be a conversation to have with your child. We don't have to make them love writing. We just want to give them the opportunity to use it. Now, someone asked about a 7-year-old, and I don't know if I'm remembering the exact question. But for a 7-year-old, that's very, very young. That's where we want to be in what I call the jot it down stage, wherever my little, I might have lost my little note here, what I call the jot it down stage, where the child talks and you do the writing, and then you share it that night at the dinner table. Catch them in the act of thinking. Don't ask them to tell you something. Wait till they're talking and catch them in the act. Jot it down. And then share it with an interested reader, another parent or a grandparent or someone else. Okay, well, I can tell that people are hopping off and I really don't like to go too long. This was wonderful. Thank you for putting up with my mess and a little bit of my scattered brainness at the beginning. I don't know what happened with the electricity in here, but I'm really grateful for all of you who came and shared and are participating. On Wednesday, what are we doing on Wednesday? See, I can't even remember. We have them all planned. On Friday, we're talking about regret, and I can't remember what Wednesday's scope is. So I will announce that by email and on BraveWriter and on the blog and on the Facebook page, okay? I'm glad this was helpful. Feel free to contact me if you have follow-up questions. My email address is julie@bravewriter.com. And if you are interested in what we're doing in November, just make my last plug here, we are going to read essays from my book called A Gracious Space. We're using the fall edition. You can buy it in the BraveWriter Lifestyle Tools at store.bravewriter.com. Oh yeah, Wednesday we're doing Raising World Citizens. Oh my gosh, that topic is so awesome. I can't wait to do that one. Thanks, Jeanette. She's my left and right arm today. So if you want a copy of A Gracious Space so you can read along in November, be sure to buy it. You can get it for the Kindle for $9.95 or buy it in a print copy from Amazon for $14.95. I'm going to pick selected essays, read them aloud, and then we'll discuss how to apply them in your homeschool. So it won't just stay information that fritters away during the day, but that gives actual application to how you conduct your homeschool. All right, everybody, let's take a deep breath. Ready? I needed that one. I love that your 7-year-old's a smarty pants. Of course he is. All right. Live honestly and write bravely. I'm Julie Bogart from BraveWriter. Thanks for tuning in today. See you Wednesday.